if you would like to potentially hop on camera, if we want to test that feature today, I'd love to hear your story about things. So essentially, this has kind of been a passion project of mine for a little while. So last year, I did some research. Helena, I will take you up on that. Did some research on the vast job descriptions of learning and development. And what I did was I basically took a bunch of job descriptions and coded them based on the ATD competency model. Now that model has changed for year 2020. Now it's the capability model. We'll talk about that maybe here in a moment. But what I thought I would kick off by doing is, if you are joining live, if you look right below my video, there should be a button, resources from today's TLD cast. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through kind of one by one, talk a little bit about the different resources and talk about how we can help you and kind of make some sense out of this if there's any sense to be made. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if it will work. Have to be patient with the technology today. All right, it looks like that is working. So let me go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. Okay, perfect. And so what I'd actually like to kick off with, and I'm really sad she could not be here today, but I have a friend that actually did some research and really dug in deep about what you can do with your different job descriptions, like what's in a name of what we call. So let me go ahead and share that real quick. And what she did is she actually analyzed what are the differences between a learning experience designer, a learning engineer, and instructional designer. And I'm sure if you've seen job descriptions, if you've looked at them, obviously you know that that is a big deal right now. There's a lot of different names for different topics out there. So we're just going to go through this really quickly and just talk a little bit about it. But what's interesting is, at least going through the job descriptions, and the job descriptions that I went through for today and I'm going to talk about are from multiple settings. So we're going to have some from corporate settings, we're going to have some from higher education, but I think the consensus across the board is many of these job descriptions are looking for unicorns. And I'm 10 plus years into my L&D career, and there is no way I can do everything in learning development at a high level. I doubt very many of us can. So I think that that's one kind of issue that Jaren was talking about here, is that, a lot of times it is really difficult to find somebody that has all of these skills. And again, with all those skills, obviously, sometimes you don't get paid for all of those skills, right? So instead of it being like 3 people jobs, you're one person's doing the jobs of 3 people. So I think that that's really kind of important to talk about. So the analysis that I did, which I'll share here in a minute, I basically pulled jobs that were full-time, based in the United States, and had preferred qualifications as well as basic qualifications. So that way we can kind of go through that. So essentially what Jaren did is she started talking about learning experience design. And as you probably know, that has really busted out of the seams the last, I would say, probably 3 to 5 years. There's a gentleman named Nils Floor that has a conference about it. And again, that's been a topic that I have seen blow up on Twitter, that I'm not going to get in the mud on that. It's a very hot topic debate on who coined learning experience design. Doesn't matter, semantics for me. But I think it's really important because in learning experience design, at least the way that Nils frames it, it's about kind of this interdisciplinary field that focuses on neuroscience and cognitive psychology and teaching. So it's kind of these blend of skills that are kind of on the peripheral of basic instructional designers. And so you hear a lot about like design thinking with learning experience design. You hear a lot about learner-centric, UX, UI, like all those are kind of blended into that learning experience designer role, at least based on some of the stuff that Jaren found. Now, another one that's coming up is learning engineer. And I believe there was a conference last year, the same time as ATD ICE in DC. And I'm going to get the name right, ICCE, I believe, or IEEC. Anyway, there was a conference about this learning consortium about talking about what this learning engineering description is. And what's interesting about that is I know that I want to say Trish Uhl is really big about that. She's shared a lot about learning engineering. And again, think of it as kind of like an infrastructure. Like to me, when I think of learning engineering, I think of those like knowledge management skills. Like how do you build a program? How do you figure out like kind of the pieces of the learning strategy? I think that that's something that a learning engineer would take care of. And then also, again, very strong in that like cognitive neuroscience space. Thank you, Luis. And that was a great conversation with Nils. I'm hoping, pending life gets back to normal soon, I'm hoping to meet Nils in August in Orlando at a conference. I'm really hoping that that still happens. And finally, Learning Architect, that one to me has been around for a while. I remember seeing many postings about that kind of around the web. And this one is, again, kind of that project manager. Who is owning the projects of the learning and development? How are they managing it? How are they making kind of these blueprints, if you will, of what the learning experiences look like at your organization? What's the strategy 2 years, 5 years out, etc. So that's just kind of like what she came up with this blog post. I really enjoy it because the reason I wanted to share it with you all is Jaren is actually an international student, part of the same PhD program that I am here at Ohio State University. And she really looked at it from an objective point of view. It's really hard, I feel like, to analyze this when you've been into the profession for a long time. So I really appreciated her insights and really sad that she's not here with us today. But essentially, here's some of the stuff that she found. And she made these awesome word clouds that you can go through. Again, the link is on the site there, that the little page that I made. But I just want to again show that with you all and share that. So yes, Susanna, ATD ICE was canceled, and it is really sad that it was. All right, next, what I would like to do is I would like to share with you my original research that I did with the coding of job descriptions. So let me go ahead and pull that up. And again, it's going to be a little bit different because, again, the ATD model has changed. It's not a competency model anymore. It's a capability model. There was a TLD cast about that was a little out there. Don't know if you want to listen to that replay or not. J-Rock, I don't know if you're still here, but I know you were part of that one. But I'll go ahead and share this real quick. And basically what I did in this one is I just listed out each piece of that competency model. And then in the competency model, it had different performance standards or different kind of levels of what that means. So for example, in performance improvement, here are some of the things that you need to do in order to conduct performance improvement. Same with change management, knowledge management, coaching, integrated talent management, managing learning programs, evaluating learning impact, learning technologies, and instructional design. So the inclusion criteria on this essentially was, they needed to be, let me go ahead and make that bigger, sorry. These things are a little bit slower. I can tell the system's still a little bit sluggish, so thanks for your patience there. But what I did was I just pulled out 25 jobs that I found that must have instructional design listed, must have, preferred qualifications as well as standard qualifications, and also has different things that you can search. So I just basically did old school like search find. I put the text into a program that can make like an analysis table, which I'll share some of that here in a little bit and go through that. So as I was going through the job descriptions, I highlighted in different colors things that I felt that went back to that competency model, because I feel like if ATD has this competency model out, shouldn't our jobs be kind of aligned to that, right? Well, spoiler alert, what I found, and I just did the corporate piece. A couple of my colleagues at Ohio State did different pieces. So I had a colleague do an international job search, same thing, had another colleague do the K through 12 space. Doesn't matter which space it was, pretty clear there was little to no alignment in these job descriptions to the ATD competency model. And things that you think should be in there were not. And then things that I was surprised by, some of the big ones are coaching. Coaching was really high, which was kind of surprising to me, because I know like in my job day to day, I don't really do much coaching. Like I'm more of a grunt building out different experiences. So I found that kind of interesting. And then, again, instructional design, learning technologies, knowledge management weren't really as high as I expected them to be. Thanks for coming, Alex. Sorry you gotta go. So yeah, so I want you all to, feel free to go through this, look at this. But for me, kind of the big surprise here was, at least in my preliminary research, I didn't see a lot of alignment in the ATD competency model to these just random jobs that I pulled off of the internet last year. So that was kind of interesting. Now, as far as the capability model goes, I have not done this for a capability model, but I am actually planning on working on that after I finish my candidacy that I'm currently going through, because I do think that that would be interesting to see what it looks like from the capability model side of the house. Again, if this is your first time being here, please put your questions in the Ask a Question feature. I'd love to have your questions as we're kind of going through that. So again, if you're just hopping on, all the resources from today is in the green button below, and feel free to click on that. And you should have access to everything. All right, so now that I've talked a little bit about what I did with the ATD competency model and like mapping it out to the different job descriptions, what I'd like to do is I'd like to maybe go through some of the ones that I just pulled the other day. So if you hold on just one second, I'll go ahead and pull those. All right. So, first ones I'll start with are the entry level ones, because again, I know that several of you here are looking to get into the field, which is wonderful. We love seeing that. I get all excited when I hear new people coming in. All right, let me go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. And I hit the wrong tab. Hold on just one second. Today has been interesting with all of our tech issues that we've had. So hang tight one moment. Thanks for your patience. Okay, here we go. Now we're in business. There we go. Okay, let me make that bigger. Perfect. Okay, so with this one, I pulled these the other day, and basically what I did was I looked for full-time job postings, again, in the United States, and the same thing, I was looking for baseline qualifications and preferred qualifications. So I think that's really interesting to kind of check against both of those. And I just made this real simple little frequency table, nothing too spectacular there. And what I found interesting is, again, just kind of the frequency of the different phrases used throughout. So these entry level ones, obviously instructional design was at the top. That shouldn't be a surprise. But some of the things that I thought were kind of interesting that popped up in entry level that didn't pop up in intermediate or kind of like the senior level, big ones were the technology piece. So it seems like, at least just on this small little sample baseline analysis, that technology is really important for entry level positions, as well as customer service. And I found that was also a little bit interesting to go in and dive into, because again, when you're kind of that entry level phase, a lot of times working with subject matter experts, working with customers can be a little bit daunting depending. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So if you want to go through, I just like have the different job title and company, the title, and then I tried to actually go from like all across the United States. So this first one here is about the Los Angeles Film School, which sounds really, really neat. And again, that one looks like it's a little bit more of, it looks like it does have kind of a higher ed flair, because it says faculty there. So you may be working with faculty. And one thing I'm going to talk about before we end today is just kind of like what I have seen between being a corporate instructional designer and a higher education instructional designer, because I think that they are a little bit different. And I'll share some of the insights there. Helena, I'm going to go ahead and send you an invite if you want to go ahead and hop on to the chat, the video. So I know you said you wanted to. So I really do not like talking this much. Usually I have J-Rock or somebody in here with me that will talk with me, but I don't like talking this much. All right. So again, going through the big question, a question that a lot of people ask are, what kind of degree do I need to get into entry level? Hey, Elena, thanks for joining me. Hey. Is your audio set up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, might want to toggle and play there and interrupt me if it comes on. Oh, you hear her. I do not. That's on me. Huh. Okay. Sorry
Can you
about
hear me now?
silly tech issues today. So Helena, tell us a little bit about you and the whole kind of where you're at in this job description. I know you shared in the chat that your remote job, your contract job is ending soon. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, this contract job was more or less on the learning management system side because the company was moving from one LMS to another. So it was a lot of the back end work, so a lot of coding, which isn't traditionally part of what an instructional designer would do, maybe more on the e-learning developer side of things. But mainly, I think I've worked as more of an e-learning developer than I have as an instructional designer. And I've done a little bit on the higher ed, but that was early on. So the majority of my experiences have been on the corporate side. And there are very big differences between corporate and higher education, clearly. So that's really what my experience has been. So my question now is, how do I, format my resume to look more what's current or what's trending right now? Because I think learning experience designer is the thing right now, which I have been reading a lot about UX design, design theories, interaction design. I have been looking because I find that to be pretty interesting. But I'm just curious, is there like something else that I would need on beside the technical aspects of my past to go into, let's say, a learning experience designer position? Do I need to have UX writing skills? Do I need to understand a great deal about typography or whatever the case may be?
That's a great question. And I can finally hear you. That was definitely on me, not anyone else. So I can't put a scapegoat on anybody. That was on me. I think overall, like as long as you relate it back to what the organization needs, and I know that's very difficult a lot of times for the job descriptions to figure out like what exactly does the organization need? How are my skill sets really going to help elevate the learning at that particular organization to enhance the performance of the folks there, or again build up like leadership skills or whatever like the little sliver of L&D looks like. I think it's great to expand out, and I know that several people are super successful in blending out like different skills outside of learning development. I see a ton of people talking about marketing. I think that's probably a great way. If you're thinking about technical writing, UX writing, I think that's great. Now, some of the descriptions that I've looked at hasn't even went down that rabbit hole. For me, a lot of the learning experience designer jobs that I've seen, I think are blending an e-learning developer role and an instructional designer. That's just my opinion. That's what I've been seeing. So I don't know. Folks in the chat, please, please, please pop up if you're seeing something different. But I feel like learning experience designer is like you're doing the instructional design plus you're actually building the e-learning, at least from what I've seen. And I know my role at Ohio State, that's what I'm doing. So just kind of a little bias there. I'll go ahead and hop into questions. I'll go ahead and start with Avi here. And Avi is asking, have you thought about text analytic tools to help process and analyze a large number of job postings? Yes, I have. And there's a lot of qualitative and quantitative data I'd like to lift from this. So qualitatively, I'd like to actually talk to people that are on the job market and going through kind of this mass posting and seeing like what it is that they're looking for when they post. I also know there's been a lot of work done about gender when it comes to applying for jobs. A lot of times women have to tick off everything before they will apply, whereas sometimes men they'll apply and not necessarily have as many tick bars of where they think they're qualified. I think that would be an interesting angle to look at as well. And I also think another interesting angle, Avi, would be a formally trained instructional designer. So somebody that actually got a degree in it versus somebody that was an accidental. I'm an accidental slash
So am I.
educated. Yeah, so I backfilled. So I had the job before the degrees. And I think there's several people like that. So great question though. As far as the text analytic tools, we have a couple of different tools that I use. Navito is one that I have access to at Ohio State. But yeah, if you have any experience or have any tools you recommend, I'd love to hear those too, Avi. Always love to learn about different stuff. So thank you for that question. All right. Another question from Laura. How much coding does one need to know to become an instructional designer? In addition, if you do not have a degree in instructional design, however, you have experience, albeit not a lot, but you have a teaching degree. You know what? That sounds pretty specific.
I started a lot of coding experience throughout my career, and I wasn't even looking to really get into coding. That was definitely not my intent. But my job as they call it a content developer, which is still an instructional designer. We still do all the analysis, the writing. We did both. We did the all-in-one. We did the writing as well as the development of the course. And with that, we had some projects that required us to manipulate or to make some updates to the HTML files that we published. So I think that even though it's still not a requirement in the field, I think it's becoming more and more important that you understand at least the basics of HTML and CSS, if nothing else. With probably not as much with JavaScript, but definitely those two, you should have at least some familiarity, because you never know when you might have to update your, let's say, your LMS site, and you might need to do some styling change, so create an external styling sheet, so it does help. It won't hurt you, but I don't think you need to become a programmer, necessarily. But it is something that I've noticed over the last couple of years has become more important.
Joe Suarez, I know you're here because I checked. I know he's very, very passionate about this topic. And one thing that he says, which he will say it way better than I do, I'm paraphrasing, is we are creating things for the web. So all of us are kind of little mini web developers anyway, if you're publishing anything for the web. And again, I know he'll probably get on his soapbox here in a moment, but I love what you said. I completely agree. I think having baseline HTML is important, especially like if you're hacking kind of the e-learning authoring tools. A little bit of JavaScript will get you pretty far. I know Jonathan Hill is killing it right now with some of the great stuff he's doing in Storyline. If you don't know him, follow him. Jonathan Rock is also doing good stuff if he's still here. So there's a lot of great people that are using these tools beyond what just the WYSIWYG, right? The what you see is what you get, the pull it in. You can do a lot of great stuff if you know just a little bit of code. So I think that would be a good thing to have. So thank you so much for that question, Laura. Great.
Also, if you're doing learning analytics, because there are a lot of people who are getting into XAPI right now, and I've been in 2 XAPI cohorts. So it does pay to know, like I said, with XAPI, you have to understand JSON a little bit, but at the very beginning of it, you really should know, HTML at least first before you get into JSON and talking about APIs and all that. And that's more on the back end of things. When we're looking at in learning development, we need to be able to give out those analytics. We need to be able to trace the experiences beyond just did they pass, did they fail? There are other things that we need to track to actually, make sure that what we're doing and what we're saying we're going to do is what's been accomplished. So that's something else that you need to think about if you're really interested in the learning analytical side of the business.
Absolutely. Took the words right out of my mouth. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm loving it. It's great. But no, I totally agree. I would love to do the XAPI cohort at some point, but I'm a 5-time XAPI cohort dropout because it never fails. As soon as it starts, like everything goes crazy for me, and I just don't have the time. So maybe when I'm done with my PhD, I'll finally have a chance to do it. But I've heard great things about it, and it seems like Mark is also saying that it's great. One other thing I'll get on my little mini soapbox about analytics, and then we'll hop back into the job postings, are yes, analytics are hot. Analytics are good. Data is good, but you want to make sure that your data is actually measuring the correct things. One of my big soapboxes that I've been on the last last like year and a half is assessment. A lot of assessment is written horribly. A lot of assessment is written to analyze somebody's deduction skills and not their content knowledge. And unless an assessment is written in a way that is balanced and, valid, I think that if somebody gets a question right, it doesn't necessarily mean they know it. And that's across the board for everything. It's like one and done learning. Like here's your learning, take your pill of learning today, and oh, you know it. I think we really need to get away from that as an industry, because people forget things. People may not immediately apply things, and then there's a lot of different things that could happen. So that's my little buzz about it. Like, yes, the analytics are good, but I also think it's super important that your assessments are sound, because if your assessments are sound, then you're going to get better data for your analytics. And yes, Michelle, I love Will Tallheimer and everything that he puts out. Performance focused small sheets are one of my favorite books, actually. Seriously, good book. All right. Let's go ahead and hop in, and then Susanna, I think that will answer your questions. Let me go ahead and share this again. I'm going to be sharing the entry here. Okay, so again, these were the entry-level ones. That was the first one. This one was an instructional designer with LMS training. So again, these entry-level positions, just looking, a lot of them don't have really hard, they're not looking for master's degrees for the most part. A lot of them are looking for an associate's or work experience or even a bachelor's. But what's always interesting, and something that I know a lot of people have talked about, is this right here, and let me make it bigger because again I failed there again. Okay, 5 years of experience. So the question always comes up: how do I get experience in learning and development and an entry level role, right? And it comes up so often. Helena, I think we've talked about this topic before. What are your thoughts on that?
People always, ask me like, well, how did you get into it if you didn't have any experience? And I was working in advertising. So no, I didn't have experience in instructional design. And, I think that there are different ways that we can get into this field. If you've done instructor-led training and you've written for instructor-led training, that is definitely one way to get into it. Some people have been LMS administrators, and for whatever reason, they've been asked to work on projects for the online component of it. Some people, like you said, are tech documentation specialists, and they've got into it that way. But to say that this person's had 5 years of what type of experience, what exactly have they been doing? Have they been on the back end of the, learning analytics? Have they been on the front end, actually been delivering training face to face? I think that is ideal because the field has been around for over 20, 30 years, whatever. So that's the ideal. But realistically, if you have had any type of interfacing with an online course, you have some idea of the design of it all, the setup, the objectives, and what the purpose of the training and how it applies to your actual job or compliance training. I usually, for those types of the years of experience, unless you're doing something at the senior level or more advanced level, I wouldn't even worry about that 5+ years. If you should have transferable skills from what you've done in the past, even if it's being a writer. Maybe you were an editor at one point in time. So I wouldn't really focus that heavily on the 5 years experience and you haven't done instructional design at all. I wouldn't worry about that.
I agree. Again, we're very aligned on things, which is like never happens. Like usually, like I'm kind of out there, but no, I completely agree. One thing I'll share that if you don't know Debbie Richards, she's at ATD Houston, amazing lady, sweet lady. I'll never forget one of the first things that I heard her say is if you're looking for experience, there are amazing nonprofits that want your help. So one thing that she talks about often is, reaching out to food banks or reaching out to different shelters or, various different nonprofits in your backyard or wherever you are. A lot of times they are very volunteer based. They don't have a lot of, money to support different training and development things. And her name is Debbie Richards, Lindsay. I'll put it here in the chat for you. Thank you, Michelle. She's on it. But I think that that's also a great way to get exposure. One thing that I am obsessed with and really helped catapult my career is volunteering and really giving back, because you see a lot of times volunteering opens so many doors for people. It really does. And so for me, like when I first moved to Columbus, I got involved with my local ATD chapter, and then it just kind of catapulted from there. And I met this guy named Mike Taylor, who's been like one of my best mentors and really taken me under his wing and been so kind to me. So I really feel like you can, again, I think someone said make your own opportunity. Totally think you can do that, and get some experience under your belt. And then there's another lady. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have two places that you can also look into. I volunteered with Taproot Foundation. You can, showcase your skills there. A lot of times Taproot will ask, if you have ever done any training experience. You'll work with other teams, with other people on the team, a project manager. You probably work with a writer, if you want to really, really hone in your skills on the development side of things. And also volunteer with a cohort that was on LinkedIn. One of the members on LinkedIn put together a cohort, and we worked together for about, 6 weeks on a training document. So that gives us a chance to like really work on skills that we probably think we need a little more help on. Like if you needed help with storyline, you can work on the storyline team and work and develop your skills that way. But I would start with like Taproot Foundation. They are really, really good with matching you up on a project that, it might be 12 weeks, but you'll get 12 weeks of solid experience. And I think that's a great experience to have on your resume.
Agreed. And I'm not fast enough in my searching skills, but there's one other one I'll recommend. Out of the UK, Leslie Price. Oh, I don't want to be big. I don't want to be like big. Okay. Leslie Price, she has a company called Learn Appeal, which I'll have to find the link because I couldn't find it quick enough. But basically, you can volunteer to create different workforce development modules about just different skills about, photography, communication, all these different things. And what she does is she stores them on Raspberry Pis, and then they send them to Africa. And so people can access your learning without having an internet connection, because it's stored on the Raspberry Pis, which are really, really neat. So highly recommend that too. She's also a terrific lady that can also give you a lot of great experience there. And again, who doesn't want to give back, right? So I just think that's another great option. All right. We talked a little bit about.
I was looking for that on my phone. I've done something with Catch Fire as well. So that's another place. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Let's hop into mid-level. How about let's talk about mid-level for just a few moments. Thanks, Louise. I, for some reason, just can't do anything today. I'm trying. All right. Okay. So these are the mid-level, and what constituted a mid-level again is it was marked on the side of the Indeed, so a mid-level. And again, no surprise here that instructional design was the highest word. But then what's interesting is subject matter experts was number 2. So what that told me is at your mid-level, you're the one that's really getting that content out of those SMEs. Now, you're probably going to be doing that too at an entry-level role, but I feel like especially for an intermediate role, like maybe you are managing your own learning projects, whereas in an entry-level role, you might have a small slice of a learning project, but you might not be managing a full project by yourself yet. You may be the person that's managing the learning management system, or you may be the person building the e-learning module, or etc. But you might not be doing the full like cycle. Whereas I feel like at a mid-level, like most definitely you are, like you're usually like taking on the project, you're doing the assessment, you're doing the storyboard, you're doing all that stuff. And then some other things too, best practices. So at this level, it seems like in the job descriptions, they're expecting you to be an expert. They're expecting you to know what good looks like, which I think is always a subjective thing when it comes to instructional design. Good instructional design may look one way at one company and may look different at another company. So really being able to bring in those best practices to focus, to tailor to that population that you're supporting is super critical. And as you can see, they want some tech on this side too. So authoring tools, course authoring, and learning management. A couple of things that popped up on this one, didn't pop up on entry, was building graphics. So they do expect you to have some kind of information or some kind of skill set with graphics. I know that's not an area of strength of mine, but thank goodness for tools like Canva to help me out there. And they also expect a little bit about evaluation. So Helena, what do you think about this? You think this is pretty spot on for like an intermediate, just looking at it?
I think that when it comes to the design document itself and the process and leading, putting together design document, leading pretty much like a project manager on the e-learning or the security awareness team, whatever they call it, the company, the design document, going through the whole process and working directly with the subject matter experts, working directly if you have a graphic designer on your team, perhaps, or other people who are going to take part in providing information or the approval process for your training. So I think it is somewhat pretty accurate there, because at the entry level, I don't imagine that you're going to have a lot of direct contact with your subject matter experts. You probably are not on the entry level side very heavy into the analysis, whereas on the more higher level, you are the one that's scoping out, or maybe have a scoping document and you're going to scope out, do we need this training, or is it something else that we need to update and fine tune, or whatever the case. You're going to start making those decisions and working with your project manager on the team to execute that information. So yeah, I would say that is pretty accurate. The building graphics part is the only part that threw me. I'm like, I'm not really sure about the building of the graphics, because if you're working with, on the corporate side, you're going to probably use graphics that are approved from the marketing team. So you're going to have more than likely a style guide that you're following. So the graphics are not going to be something that you're going to make yourself. Maybe you're going to have a team that's going to actually have pre-approved graphics that you can insert into your training module. And everything else I can agree with, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe the building graphics for this may be like building on an infographic, some data visualization, explainer video like a Beyond or something. Maybe that's what it meant. Not remembering a whole lot about it, but and again, you all can scroll through and see that. Now, another thing that's going to come up, and I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole because I saw kind of a discussion on LinkedIn about it, and I don't want to get into the weeds, but at this level, I'm seeing a lot of the preferred for the ATD certifications. I think that was mentioned a couple of different times. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to maybe check that out and see if that's something you'd like to explore if you are a mid-level professional. But again, I believe that, it may or may not open doors, kind of depending on your experience and background. But again, everybody can make their own decision on that. Don't want to say anything positive or negative. I'll be apathetic there. So yeah, so these are just some examples. And again, these are open jobs too. So if you're looking at this and you're like, hey, I want to apply for that job, knock yourself out. I think it would be good to do. Another thing too, I noticed on some of these, and this is kind of side right here. This one right here is, yes, you can work remotely or from our office, but some of them said, we're only going to let you work remotely during this particular pandemic that's going on, and then we expect you still in the office. So I think that's interesting, but again, I don't know. J-Rock asked, how long is the certification good for? That's a great question. I think you have to get continuing education units to continue it up. And yes, Luis, thank you for the playlist recommendation there. All right. Finally, let's hop over into the senior level, and then I want to talk a little bit about higher education. All right, so let me go ahead and hop on over to that. And thank you all again so much for your patience. Today has been very interesting. This is probably the most challenging I've ever had it hosting TLD Cast before, but trying to stay with it and stay positive. All right. It's hard too because I'm not really a positive person. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Okay.
Positive energy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Helena. And I really appreciate you hopping on too. All right. So this was the senior level, and I got a lot of surprises here. So the first surprise is a lot of these that were listed senior level say 3 years of experience. And I thought that was really interesting considering we had two at the entry level that said 5 or plus more years of experience. It's like, oh my goodness, here we go. Like this is not aligned whatsoever. And it's really difficult for, us to figure out like what this looks like, right? So I found that being pretty interesting. Also in this one, you're getting your management skills in there. So again, you're probably leading a team or a team lead of different L&D folks at this level. And this is the first time that I saw also in the job descriptions that business needs. So they're expecting somebody at the senior level to be that business partner when it comes to learning and development. Anything hop out here at you, Helena?
Learning strategies, I would think that would also be at the mid-level as well, not just at the senior level. And learning outcomes, both of those, I mean, of course, they're important throughout the whole process, but I would think that if you're developing a learning strategy, you should be familiar with that, or at least be assisting or working with that at the mid-level as well. So I was those two do stand out. I get the management skills, obviously that makes sense. I guess the business needs, you need to understand the business itself, really have a very good understanding of that. I know at the entry level, you might work like, when I first started working in the cybersecurity side of things, I didn't really know a lot about the products and services. And even though I wasn't necessarily at the entry level, I still had to really, really take a lot of their online courses just to get up to speed about the business itself. So that's I think business needs and understanding the business and the products should be across the board with everything. The blended learning experience, okay. I mean, I guess, like I said, some people do come from instructor-led training, or some people were teachers. So they already understand that side of things. I don't think it's well, I guess it could be necessary at the senior level, but a lot of people who are really coming into the field, I notice, are coming in who were teachers or instructors. So they already have that type of experience. But to put together a training for blended learning where it's partially online, you do need to understand learning strategies very well, and you do need to understand adult learning theories. Those are two of the things that do come in later on as you develop skills in this field.
Absolutely. And it takes a while to get there. And I know, especially folks that are getting, acclimated or new to our profession, a lot of times they feel very overwhelmed, and they shouldn't, because it does take a lot of time to build that out. Wanted to share this right here. So here's an example of the experience that they were looking for in this particular role. They wanted 8 years, a minimum of 8 years, and then 7 years of different elements there, but it's okay to have a bachelor's degree or high school diploma. So for this one, to me, it seems like they want more of that experience, and they're not as interested in your educational credentials. So, I just wanted to point that out there that, again, doesn't necessarily always, but it is a preferred qualification if you do have a master's. Let's see, anything else on this one? Because I really want to get to higher ed.
Let's do higher ed.
All right, let's go to higher ed. Okay.
Okay.
And I'm going to be very positive when I'm talking about higher education today.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know a lot about the higher ed side of business. Like I said, I only did like a couple of projects early in my career. So, but I'll do the best that I can.
All right. All right, here is what it looks like for higher education. Again, instructional design, obviously, is going to be our highest frequency because I looked for jobs that said instructional design. But some things that pop out to me immediately is the teaching piece. So maybe having the opportunity to teach online. The term with faculty, that is, to me, the biggest difference between being a corporate or nonprofit instructional designer and being a higher education instructional designer. Being in the corporate space, I feel like you and your team usually own that learning space. So you are the ones that are on on it for the learning, right? So you're the ones that are developing everything, you're analyzing it, you're working, blah, 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 blah. Higher ed's a completely different animal. At the end of the day, that content, if you're making it for academic courses, it belongs to that faculty member. A lot of times for the faculty member, it is considered intellectual property for that faculty member. So depending, they could either really want to partner with you and really have you help elevate their course, or they could say, I was told I need to be here. I just need you to do this for me, and I don't want any additional help. I know it varies at different institutions. Cara Spray, I know, had to leave, but I know the institution that she works at, they actually have like a form and where people have to apply to work with the instructional designers. Whereas it's a little bit different where I work, like we'll help anybody, but they have to come in the door. I can't force them to do anything. And so that has been different to deal with because you may hear somebody say, hey, I need your help with this, please build me this, and then you'll follow up with them and then you get crickets. Nobody will respond back, and then you'll move on to the next project, and then they pop back up, hey, remember me, I want that project done. So it's a little bit interesting. And another thing that is really different about higher education is I feel like you are in a tech support role a lot of times. So it's not just building out different learning experiences, but it's also partnering with faculty to teach them how to do stuff on their own. So it's more like teaching someone how to fish. So if you are in like a content creation space or something like that, where you're working where subject matter experts are building out their own content, higher ed might actually be a good fit for you if you're feeling comfortable with that. But during this whole panic gaji, as I'm calling it, I've spent a ton of time helping faculty learn how to use Zoom, learn how to upload things in the learning management system. And again, do I think that it's the highest standard of online learning? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, it is on to, like, again, the faculty member can do whatever they want to do with a course. So it's a little bit different.
I had a question about
Yeah,
that.
go
Do
ahead.
you guys adhere to quality matters?
Oh, great question. For the syllabus, yes, at least in my institution. So anything that moves online, I do a syllabus review. I actually have one in my email I'll have to do after this cast today. But yeah, so we'll do that for the syllabus. But then after the syllabus, like, again, it's up to them. If they want to put it online, they can put it online. If they want to work with us, they can work with us. And I'm glad you picked up my joke, J-Rock. I appreciate that. Veronica asked about experience using Blackboard or Canvas. So I know Canvas is free. You can just get a Canvas account, no problem. Also Moodle, I know you could probably get an account, no problem, to play around. Blackboard, not as many institutions are using that. Like I think Canvas is definitely the king right now, as far as what most higher education places are using. But I mean, I feel like with LMSs, like once you know how to use one, you can use pretty much all of them. They're very similar, I feel like, at least the ones that I have dealt with. So great question, Veronica. Couple other things on the higher ed that I think is really interesting is about equity and really focusing on the equity of populations and people. That's something I don't feel like we talk a lot about in corporate L&D, right, Helena?
Not at all, or very little. I would say we don't. That's definitely not something that comes up on the corporate side. I shouldn't say not at all, but it's very limited in conversation. Interesting. I have to think about that one. That's
Yeah, I,
interesting.
I like that though. I mean, I think
I
it's
do
very
too.
important that, we focus on making something for everyone. But
Mm.
yeah, Laura, I kind of agree. It is sad it's only kind of front of mind here. And then again, professional development, campus supporting. So the last couple weeks of my job, I have done, again, a lot of tech support, things I didn't expect to be doing, but it is what it is. I mean, we want to make sure that students have access to something online. But
Good question. What about accessibility?
yeah, accessibility is also very critical in higher ed that I don't necessarily think it gets talked about too much in the corporate world unless somebody's a contractor for the federal government, right? Then I know it's like mandated. But yeah, accessibility sadly didn't really come up, at least in the major like themes. But
Mm.
yeah, it is very important in higher education. There's a lot of tools I'd love to use that I can't because they're not accessible. So
Mhm.
yeah, big deal. Big deal. Oh, Randy, are you picking up on that? I don't know what you're talking about. That's not good. Maybe my biases are coming out. Don't know about that.
It didn't sound like that. I was just surprised those two things, stood out, especially with the accessibility, because in corporate, it's not talked about as much. Well, at least when I first started, it wasn't talked about a lot. It would be something in my previous experiences that would come up if there was an issue that was brought to our attention. And so I made it a habit to make sure that when I put together our e-learning guide for the department, I made sure to, we have to make sure this also adheres to, we have accessibility, because you can't go around asking, well, who's blind or who, is deaf or anything like that. You can't really ask those, you can't do that. So you should have empathy. And that's part of, if you're looking to do learning experience design, empathy is something that you really need to have when it comes to designing your course, just like when it comes to designing a website. You need to make sure it's accessible. So I was surprised I didn't see that on the university or the higher education side of things. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But again, remember, this is just a very tiny little sample. I'm not saying that this is end all be all. This is not scientifically based. Like, I didn't do any statistical tests to see the significance of any of this stuff, right? This was just randomly pulled out. I just wanted to at least start the conversation, have people start thinking about it. As we're wrapping up, I can't believe it's already almost been an hour. It's crazy. I just can't believe it's went by that fast. I've seen some things in the chat about different books, different resources. And so if you go back to, again, the tab below us, the resources from today, I have put a couple of different resources in here that I'd recommend. One little side soapbox. I feel like there's a lot of people out there right now peddling and really trying to get people to pay for things, especially if you're new to learning and development. I'm just like cautioning you, do your due diligence. There are people out there that I think are a little bit scammy, just me personally, based on what they've put out. So the folks that I've put on here, I don't necessarily think are scammy, because I wouldn't want to do that to you. So if you're looking to really grow in storyline, can't recommend the e-learning guys enough. And they also have a great podcast. They have a great series there of courses you can take. And then also Tim Slade has great stuff on there. He has his own little e-learning designers academy. It has a storyboarding course, which is incredible, and then a couple of other things. And then Ashley Chiazon also has some articulate storyline stuff. And if you are brand new, there's a couple folks that are really trying to grow and really cater to the audience of news. So I know Alex Salas and Erin King just launched the e-learning launch, and then Dr. Robin Sargent has her own Idol Academy. Recommend those. And if you're kind of at like that mid-level, or you're wanting to kind of grow, Devlin Peck is killing it right now with his XAPI tutorials. So if you want to learn more about that, go to his site. And then if you're stuck on portfolios and you want to build your portfolio, Kristen Anthony has this Go Design Something site that gives you a prompt, really great ideas to build your portfolio. And then Ashley Chiazon also has a portfolio course on there that's free that you can go through and help build out your portfolio. The e-learning launch link is invalid. Well, that absolutely stinks. I will fix that, and I am so sorry. If somebody would be kind enough to pull that for me, I would be forever thankful. Appreciate it.
Pluralsight is also offering, if you want to do some design
Yes.
or some coding, if you want to, work on those skills. I'm taking an InDesign course right now on Pluralsight, so it's free for a month, I believe. So you can, free in April, so you can actually get on that if you want to work on some other skills or get into design and coding. That'll be a great site to look into.
Okay, and check that one out, and I'll fix it on the doc, but thank you. I appreciate that. Randy asked if I think getting a PhD is worth the 5-year investment. Man, Randy, you're poking me today, aren't you? So as somebody that is almost finished with their PhD, I will tell you that, do I think it will open doors for me down the road? Yes. But would I do it had I not? Okay, let me back up. When I decided to do the PhD, first of all, I work at higher education institution. So the PhD cost me $0. So that is a benefit of working in higher education. I got my tuition free at my school. So for me, because it was free, I thought that it'd be worth the investment of my time, because shame on me if I don't take advantage of that opportunity. And it's been a wild ride. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If you want to hit me up offline, I will give you the deets of being a PhD student. It's not easy. I will say that it has probably been one of the most challenging things that I've ever done in my life, but I'm also very proud of my tenacity, and I really have pushed myself and grown in ways that I didn't know that I had in me. So I will say that that has been good. But I really like what I'm doing my dissertation on. I'm doing my dissertation on the Articulate e-learning heroes challenges. So that's been really interesting to research and talk to different people about that. So that gets me really excited. But again, I did it to begin with because I thought I wanted to be faculty. But then after I saw how the sausage was made, I decided faculty was not for me. So nice way of putting it, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So Susanna has a question about the positions miscategorized in tech and HR. Yeah, we're in a weird spot, aren't we? I mean, if you look at ATD, I feel like ATD is catering to many different audiences. I feel like there's like a little IT sector. There's, the human resource sector. There's kind of this like coaching sector that they're, trying to cater to. So I do think that we're all over the place, because that's kind of like the best part I feel like about learning development. Learning development can be in a hospital, it can be in a mom and pop shop, it can be anywhere. So the nice thing is I feel like we have transferable skills to go into many different industries and professions, Susanna. So I feel like, yeah, there were some out there. I have a little side chat in LinkedIn with several of my friends we call the snark tank, and one of them shared a job posting that wanted gaming and coding skills. It was an instructional designer, wanted like Blender skills to build like 3D models. I mean, it was really, really out there. And we were like, what on earth are they wanting? So I do think that it's an issue. Really was hoping to see more alignment with kind of the things ATD is putting out with the job postings, but unfortunately, I'm not seeing it right now. Helena, what about you? Have you seen a lot of miscategorized job postings?
You know what? I have seen quite a bit. And I would say this, I think the problem there is the people who are writing the job descriptions do not really understand what the job entails. They don't know if they know the word instructional designer. So they think, okay, well, that's instructional design, and everything that goes in the stew is what we're going to put in there for what we think that we need. And I don't think they reference ATD. I don't think they actually speak to people who are actually in the field and actually understand what instructional design is or what e-learning development is. I think there's a lack of just the one-on-one, this is instructional design. This is what it actually consists of. This is an e-learning developer. This is what it consists of. And because you don't have that conversation with people who are writing, as well as people who say, okay, I need someone on my team who can do these certain skills. And they don't have anyone to tell them, well, that's not an instructional designer, or that's actually 2 different or 3 different people. So, this is what the job should, if you want a 3D modeler, fine. And that's that job. You want an instructional designer, that's that job. But you have too many companies who want to just make it, if we can get someone who can do everything, then we can just call it the all-in-one instructional designer job. That's really, when you lack knowledge, then, you just go with what you think works.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. And I love Laura's question. Save the best for last. What books do you recommend as entry level must reads? I'm popping in the chat my all-time favorite L&D book, my first L&D book that my manager at Amazon bought me, called Telling Ain't Training. I love that book. I love it so much. And J Rock knew, like as soon as I started saying, J Rock already knew the title of it, because I talk about that book so much. I love it so much because it's just good solid advice that gives you a really great foundation. That's one of my favorites. Julie Dirkson's design for how people learn is also another must read. There's a shout out to the performance focused smile sheets. That is also a fantastic book. Those would kind of be, I would say, my first 3 that I would recommend. What about you, Helena? What are you reading?
right now I haven't been reading anything here lately. Right now, nothing here lately. I've been really focused on interaction design, so I haven't really been the handbook. Oh well, I haven't been reading any books. You mentioned some of the ones. The Telling training. I that's definitely something I was going to mention. But yeah, I haven't been doing. I haven't read that one. I don't have that one. No,
I
I don't
have
have
all these books out because I'm working on my candidacy, and so like I have a ton of books behind me. But those were some of the ones that I've been reading right now that are pretty good too. Oh, Accidental Instructional Designer is great too. Jay Reed.
I thought we mentioned that earlier, but yeah, that's actually a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Helena, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you hopping on. Today's been a little bit of a hot mess express, but I'm glad you hopped on, bailed me out. I owe you. Thank you so much. Where can people find you at?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So just look up Helena Smith on LinkedIn and send me a note and I'll connect with you.
Fantastic. So again, thank you all. Please, please, please look at the resources, check them out, share them, talk about them. I think we're going to have a part 2 of this. So Tracy Cantu, who's the Learning Technologies Director at Whole Foods, is wanting to come on and talk about how to pivot into leadership. And I think that's a great topic. And she is a fantastic person. I met her through ATD, and she's just a wonderful person. So I'm really excited that she wants to come on and talk about that. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's help each other. It's a scary time for a lot of people. Let's just help each other get through it. Anything I can do to help anybody, please send me a message. Happy to help any way that I can. And one last plug, please join our Slack channel. If I can remember I think that opens. Hopefully that works. No, it doesn't, Kara. Bad. We have a Slack channel for this community, and I need to be better about being on there, but not always the best on that. But we'd love to have you be part of that, and let's keep the conversation going. I don't know. I'll have to figure out the link, but it's tldchat.us something. So anyway, thank you again. Enjoy the link to the recording will be just through the same URL that got you here. So as soon as I click off, it should render hopefully soon. Thank you for your patience with all the tech issues and have a good day. Enjoy the rest of
Thank
your
you.
Thursday. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.